The Learning Challenge. The Learning Challenge curriculum was originally devised for the previous national curriculum and has been completely revamped to take account of the 2014 national curriculum, plus the Education Inspection Framework, which was launched in September 2019. The units of work have been amended and adapted so that they actually meet the requirements of the national curriculum and also ensures that it does actually meet the needs of a curriculum intent and indeed curriculum implementation. The starting point basically is to acknowledge the fact that you are working from the national curriculum and recognizing the key knowledge and skills that children need to acquire. To enable us to help us, I'm going to share the screen and hopefully help you understand a little bit more about what has been done to really develop this product. The first thing you'll notice that we have for each subject area acknowledged the key knowledge that children need to acquire and take with them for the rest of their lives. So basically the whole curriculum is built on the premises that we are building on previous knowledge and that we're actually enabling children to remember this as they go through school. So the knowledge has been carefully organized in such a way that it's linked to the unit of learning and that you are also able to return to actually review the learning in subsequent units. So one of the documents that we produced is this one here, How to Assess a Knowledge-Rich Curriculum. And this is a unit of work that is within the Learning Challenge. Certainly if you buy for the Premium Plus, it is a part of the Premium Plus package, basically. Within it, you will find examples of this form. Geography, for instance, has been broken down in this way. First of all, for Key Stage 1, using the four major headings from the national curriculum, the location of knowledge, place knowledge, human and physical geography, skills and fieldwork. The next row in the italics horizontal row just below those titles are taken directly from the national curriculum. And then what we've done is to break them down into what we think should be covered in year 1 and what we think should be covered in year 2. Now, because the national curriculum for non-core subjects presents the national curriculum in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 format, you have flexibility effectively to decide which year each goes. So for instance, we've actually put down here, know the names of and locate the 4 capital cities of England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland as a year 1 objective, but it could easily be moved to year 2 if it fitted better with your scheme of work. However, what we have tried to do is to obviously create that little bit of build-up. So for instance, knowing the names of the 4 countries that make up the UK is a year 1 objective, while knowing the names of and locating the 7 continents of the world is something that we'd expect children to meet in year 2. To give you some other examples there, we've put, for instance, this is just the geography, don't forget, this is here for every single subject of the national curriculum. The location knowledge, for instance, okay, in Key Stage 2, actually, as you can see, there's a lot of work to be done here, and we've broken it into 3 sections, again, using the horizontal type on the top there, sorry, in the italic type on the horizontal line on the top there, you can see how those 3 work. Then we'd go on to place knowledge and human and physical knowledge before finally hitting geographical skills and fieldwork. Now, don't forget, what you're seeing in front of you is what we describe as the key and significant knowledge that children need to acquire. Hopefully, they'll acquire a lot more knowledge than this. But what we are saying is, unless they've got this significant knowledge, they're going to find the next bit of learning in that topic a little bit more difficult as a result. However, we've actually further developed this now into progression mapping for the broader curriculum, including retrieval and pre-knowledge. Now, the difference is, as you can see, if I show you this one, this is the biology section from the science curriculum. you can see that the year 1 and year 2, underneath in black, is the key and significant knowledge which was recognized in the previous document. However, what we've recognized is that we need to be more proactive in ensuring that children are retrieving appropriate information before they start this unit of work. So within the Learning Challenge curriculum, we are recommending basically that the first lesson for children in a unit of work is retrieving previous information which is appropriate to the learning that's just about to happen. So if we take an example of this, for instance, okay, what we're looking at is we know that in year 1, in terms of animals, including humans, children will have actually learned about the names of a variety of wild and garden plants. They will have known and classified animals into those that eat. And so according to what they eat, carnivores, herbivores, non-herbivores, they will actually sort them into living and non-living things, and also classify them into a range of animals, amphibians, reptiles, and so on. So before they hit the next unit of work, we need to retrieve that little bit of information, plus some more, to enable children to really make the most of their learning. So this has been done for every subject, okay, so that it's there for every single subject and is actually really helping you to see how best to retrieve. Now, retrieving, as you probably know, is one of the key components of helping children learn and keep learning for the long term. So this section here is just the biology section, and as you can see, if we start to look, for instance, at animals, including humans, in year 4, you can see the children need to identify, name the parts of the human digestive system. They also need to know the functions of the organs and of that human digestive system. They need to identify, know the different types of human teeth, and they also need to know about the function of different human teeth. Now, on the retrieval side, before we start that learning, we recognize that children have already in other science lessons learned about what makes a nutritious, balanced diet, and that the role that the skeleton and muscles have in the body. They will have also learned about exercise and hygiene so that the body is kept healthy and fit. But also they will have learned through food technology about healthy eating, through physical education about exercising. And also they will bring a lot of personal knowledge with them, okay? So for instance, not many children in year 4 would not be able to point to where their stomachs are, for instance, okay? And they will have a good idea about what's likely to happen to food at that stage of the digestion system, because they will frequently love to talk about poo, of course, okay? So basically what you've got is that builder of the curriculum. And in addition, we've also included in this document what the year 7 expectation is, so that year 6 teachers particularly will be able to have a really good idea as to what is going to be the challenge facing their children when they move on to secondary school. Now, that kind of background then helps to create a sort of an anchor, basically, to the curriculum. The next thing we do is to look at the different stages of that curriculum. So in history, for instance, in Key Stage 1, we have different units of work. So for instance, we have a unit of work about changes within living memory. We also have a unit of work related to the lives of significant individuals. We have a local history unit. And what we've actually done, as you can see in this one, we've acknowledged what the national curriculum requirement is. The middle column, the column immediately to the right, identifies the key knowledge the children need to get out of this unit. And on the right-hand side completely, I am suggesting a starting point, which is actually set out in the form of a question. By doing that, we are building a complete picture of the learning we've got. So for history, we've done this all the way through. For geography, we've done it all the way through. And we've also done it all the way through for science. Now, the history and geography we've combined in a way so that you're actually able to buy that as one element of the learning challenge, or if you only wanted the science, you can go down that route. Most people, however, go for all 3 areas, okay? Now, basically, what you can see here is exactly what we've done, the same as we've done for history. This one is for geography, but for lower key stage 2 children, just to give you differences there. So for instance, okay, we can see that some of the questions there, how are rivers formed, followed by why do we have floods and what are their impact on human life? Again, where in the United Kingdom is whatever their local major town is? How much do we know about European countries? How are mountains formed and so forth? Now, basically, they come from taking parts of the national curriculum, identifying the key knowledge the children need to acquire, and then finding a reasonable question that will interest the children immediately. We've done the same, as you can see here, for science. This happens to be the Year 6 example, where we have things like, is the heart the most important pump we own? How can we classify all the world's species? Have we always looked like this? How can we increase electrical power? And how can you light up your life? Are the key questions which will meet the 5 units of science learning expected for Year 6 children. The other thing we've done is, in putting the curriculum together, we are conscious of the narrative of each of the curriculum. So for instance, in history, we have a very big unit of work in Key Stage 2, which is looking at how did Britain change between the Stone Age and 1066. And then we are sort of given an opportunity of studying at least one period of history beyond 1066. Well, what I'm trying to show underneath, basically, is that sort of build up a picture. In our learning challenge, apart from the mixed age classes, where we do combine some of this, we have actually said, look, the Stone Age period up until the end of the Iron Age could be looked at as a Year 3 unit, followed up from the end of the Iron Age to the end of the Roman occupation of Britain in Year 4, and followed up by the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings in Year 5, and then gives us an opportunity of deciding which is the most appropriate unit of work to look for in Year 6, going beyond 1066. We've tried to build in that chronology for children so they can see the sense of the learning. So hopefully what you're seeing is that they would be able to appreciate that because of the discovery of the wheel during the Iron Age, things altered quite rapidly for Britons. They were able to move rocks around the country much more quickly, much more easily. By the end of the Iron Age, because of the discovery of iron ore, we were able to plow fields and so forth. And then the Romans arrived, which really advanced our thinking quite considerably. Suddenly cities were beginning to be developed, roads were beginning to be made. We had aqueducts bringing water from various places straight to houses and homes, etc., etc. So that kind of sort of process is what we're trying to create here. And then, of course, we look at how the Anglo-Saxons brought law and order. We look at what the Vikings did to support. But don't forget, the Vikings, many Vikings came into our country to look for better farmland, and many settled here and stayed here forever. Alongside that, of course, we've got a study of the ancient civilizations. Now, basically, when I'm actually looking at timelines, and within this unit, you will find this, the timeline specifies the British timeline only, okay, which is on the bottom here. And above that, you can see all the possible ancient civilizations that we're actually studying. So you can get an idea of how long those ancient civilizations were really dominant on Earth. And then if we're looking at one of them in particular, in this case, say, let's look at the ancient Egyptians, we bring it down and sit it on that British history. So what I hope children are finding is that actually during the Iron Age, when we were barely learning to plow a field, the ancient Egyptians were doing all these amazing things with the monuments and so forth that they were creating. Really, we were a backward country as far as the world was concerned in those ages. And perhaps you could then use that beyond 1066 unit to consider, well, how on earth are we such a powerful country now, or have been? And indeed, probably we could really focus on the British Empire, the development of the British Empire as being the major turning point. Well, that happened, of course, mainly around the Elizabethan era, the Tudor period, perhaps a little bit before that, but significantly during the Elizabethan era, because of the discovery of different lands around the world, which we very quickly came to put our flags on and call our own. Now, effectively then, that might give a more chronological narrative feel to the history in Key Stage 2. Similarly, if we look at areas in geography, I think it's important, for instance, that we don't do natural disasters such as volcanoes and earthquakes before children learn about how a mountain is formed. So we've tried to build that into the Learning Challenge curriculum. We also would want the children to know about how a river is formed before we talked about flooding, for instance. Similarly, we want children to understand about biomes and the different type of biomes around the world, perhaps before we focus on one of them, which very often is the rainforest. In the same way, we want to look at that relationship between looking at the locality, looking at the United Kingdom, looking at Europe, and looking at the whole world. So what we are trying to do is to create a curriculum that takes this sort of narrative into account. We also want to move on to say, look, once we've identified what the children are looking at, what the Learning Challenge curriculum does is presents a series of questions within a typical half term for a class to really investigate. So for instance, this is a year 2 example of beyond living memory, and they're looking at the impact of the Great Fire of London. And basically, as you can see there, we start off with creating a number of paper houses, closing together, setting them on fire, etc., to give that wow effect at the beginning. And then we're going to look at where is London, okay? And when did the fire happen, which really gives us a massive focus on location and also back to the timelines. Why did the Great Fire spread so quickly will help them understand that buildings in London obviously were built very closely together. They were also likely to be built up from material that was easily combustible. We bring in Samuel Pepys, so they understand how we know today about the Great Fire of London is very often aimed because of his diary, for instance, okay? And then how did they try and put the fire out? And what would they do today? Which helps children look at the different firefighting equipment around in those days and how it's developed today into what we have. And then we actually have a link to art, because most of the learning challenges, we try and link 1 week of art or 1 week of DT into it in such a way that it meets the requirements of the art curriculum. So when we break that art curriculum down, just like we showed you earlier for history, geography, and science, we actually make sure that the area that was applicable for year 2 is linked to the type of activity we'd expect within each of these units. Finally, we provide an opportunity for reflection. And again, this is built in because of metacognition, because of retrieval, because of everything we know about helping children to learn for the long term. In this case, we're asking children to summarize what they now know about the Great Fire of London by presenting information in different ways. Let's look at another example. The one I put on here is the science example related to the digestive system, okay? And what we're really looking at here is to really create an exciting model which does allow enough working scientifically, but also accumulates knowledge. Now, what I haven't said is that the units of work also recommend books to be used alongside each of these. So in most cases, there is an excellent quality text, literature, that can be used alongside. And there is a scheme of work presented for that, as well as the scheme of work for the science, the history, or the geography model. Now, you don't have to follow it, but we do recommend that you read the book at the very minimum level. So again, if we look at why should the rainforest matter to us, we've got one unit of work which actually focuses alongside The Explorer by Catherine Rundle, and another one that focuses along the Lorax by Dr. Zeus. Now, in each case, basically, what we are trying to do here is to really link the history, geography, and science to great quality literature at the same time. Now, effectively then, this is another example of the circulatory system in year 6. And what you get with the Learning Challenge is a full-blown scheme of work. For those of you who are subscribing to the Premium Plus, there is a scheme of work associated with all of this. What it does, it actually identifies websites to use with children. It identifies the type of learning you want to get from the children, takes account of the things that we learned from the subject-specific analysis that Ofsted has done recently. And we are trying our best to really ensure that your curriculum can be personalized as much as possible. So what we actually do is, rather than suggest you have an off-the-shelf curriculum, you have a recommended starting points, which you can develop yourself. There is, for some teachers, much more there than there is a need for other teachers. So a newly qualified teacher, for instance, might well use the full-blown scheme of work. A more experienced teacher may well adapt and use some of that scheme of work, but knows well enough what needs to be done to meet the requirements of the national curriculum and so forth. So basically, what we've got is a national curriculum coverage captured within the Learning Challenge. And what we are trying to do is to give you as many products within that as possible to help you develop children's understanding of history, geography, and science. Art and DT are integrated into it because most, if not all, of the units of work have a week dedicated either to art or indeed design and technology. We hope in this way you're able to gain a huge amount from the teaching of history, geography, and science, but more importantly, that the children remember key knowledge for the rest of their lives. Thank you.